Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are continuing our examination of the Olivet Discourse. We are demonstrating that the Olivet Discourse is not about two different subjects, i.e., the fall of Jerusalem and events leading up to it in AD 70, supposedly Matthew chapter 24, 4-34, versus a discussion of and a prediction of the supposed end of the Christian age. That's the view I was raised with, ladies and gentlemen. And as I've shared with you, that's the view of the majority of those in the fellowship in which I was raised, in the All-Millennial Fellowship. But it won't work. As I've been sharing with you, over the last 560 videos, it just doesn't work. Now, let me illustrate. On Monday, we began an examination of the parallels between Matthew 25:31 and following and other passages that deal with the coming of the Son of Man. After all, Matthew chapter 25:31 and following, when the Son of Man comes with all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit on the throne of his glory. Now, it's interesting to me, very, very quick sidebar here. There's some who try to claim that the millennium did not begin until AD 70, because passages like Matthew chapter 25:31 and following says, well, that's when he would sit on the throne of his glory. So, if the millennium is the time of Christ ruling and reigning in his kingdom, then very clearly that must have been in AD 70. Well, the problem with that is there is a distinction, ladies and gentlemen. This is a sidebar, but it's important. There is a distinction between Christ coming into his kingdom, beginning the kingdom being bestowed on him, and is coming in the full exercise of that sovereign authority. In Luke chapter 19, Jesus was going to go away into a far country there to receive the kingdom. That's where he would enter the reign. His return would be in judgment, to put down his last enemies, at the end of the millennium. That's what that's all about. So, Matthew chapter 25:31 is not the beginning of the millennium. It's the end of the millennium. It is not Christ coming into his kingdom. It is Christ having entered into his kingdom, now coming in his kingdom, when he would sit on the throne of glory, gather the people together, those who had accepted, those who had rejected during the time of the preaching of the gospel into all the world, the time in which he was ruling in the midst of his enemies, Psalms 110, verse 4. It is at the end of the millennium. Now, got to go on. Just thought I'd throw that in there. No extra cost today, all right? All right. We've been examining the parallel passages. Matthew 10, 22, and 23 had to have occurred in the lifetime of Jesus' first century apostles. As I pointed out to you, Matthew 10, 22, and 23 is the coming of the Son of Man after the gospel has been preached and after the apostles are being persecuted. That did not happen prior to the ascension, in which people want to put the coming of the Son of Man of Acts chapter 1 and Daniel chapter 7. Sorry, it doesn't work. Even Daniel chapter 7, that coming of the Son of Man is for the judgment of the little horn. Oh, and by the way, it'd be in the days of Rome, not at the end of the Christian age, not at the end of America or anything similar to it. It'd be in the days of Rome. That was not Acts chapter 1. So, we have Matthew chapter 10, 22 and 23, the coming of Christ in judgment of the persecutors and the vindication of the persecuted saints, including the apostles. First century reality. Matthew 16, 27 and 28. The Son of Man will come in the glory of the Father with his angels and shall reward every man according to his works. There's the judgment. That's Matthew 10, 22 and 23. And verily I say unto you, there are some standing here which shall not taste of death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Some of those people are not still alive, ladies and gentlemen. Now, take a look at Matthew chapter 24. Here's where it gets really, really, really interesting for both the amillennial and the postmillennial world. Now, a little bit of backstory here. In both the amillennial and the postmillennial world, and in his book, Matthew 24, Loraine Bettner wrote what is still considered to be almost the definitive work from the amillennial perspective. And Loraine Bettner takes the position, Matthew chapter 4, or 24, 4 to 34, all of that, every word of it, is AD 70. Yeah, the abomination of desolation, first century. Great tribulation, first century. The coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory, with his angels, with the sound of a trumpet for the gathering of the elect. Yep, that was in AD 70. Because, you see, that's typical prophetic language taken directly out of the Old Testament. And Loraine Bettner is correct. He understands that language is not descriptive of a literal physical coming of the Lord. It is an event within history. It is not an event to end history. But wait a minute. We then come to Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, and what do the same commentators tell us? Well, again, Loraine Bettner tells us, well, Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is very clearly the end of the world. It's the end of the Christian age. Very quick anecdote. A friend of mine some years ago had the opportunity to study with a man who is literally a world-class scholar. One of the greatest debaters of atheists. He debated number 1, number 2, and number 3 atheists in the world. He debated Thomas Anthony Flew. After the debate, Thomas Anthony Flew actually said, I guess I'm going to have to consider myself no longer an atheist, I'm an agnostic now. Wow, incredible. So this friend of mine who had really just some years of study under his belt approached this scholar and asked him if he would study with him on eschatology. He said, of course I will. That was incredible. So my friend went to the home of this scholar. He had contacted me and he said, what do I do? What do I do? And I suggested that he do the following. The scholar was known for keeping a whiteboard, if you please, in his study so that he could just, chart things out. He could write things out and visualize them and what have you. So he was known for that. And I told my friend, I said, now, he's known for this. So I said, if he's got the blackboard or whiteboard, here's what you do. On one side, you go to Matthew chapter 24, 29 to 34. And you list out every single one of the constituent elements. Coming of the Son of Man, on the clouds, power and great glory, with the angels, with the trumpet, the gathering of the elect in that generation. And I said, then ask this scholar, what did that apply to? And I said, I'll guarantee you his answer will be, that was fulfilled in the first century because of Matthew 24, 34. Okay. Once he has answered that question, draw a line right down the middle of the board, and on the other side, put 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, where you have the coming of the Lord on the clouds, with the angels, with a shout, with a trumpet, to gather the elect, while those people were still alive. And I said, ask this scholar, what does this apply to? he was super, super, super excited. And I told him, I said, you got to call me after this study is over. You got to let me know how this goes. He called me up, the day of the study, the day it was over. And he said, Don, you're not going to believe what happened. He goes, I did exactly like you said. When I wrote out the elements there on 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, I handed him the chalk and I said, can you please explain to me what 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 is talking about in the comparison? Can you show me the distinction? And he said the scholar stood there staring at the chalkboard, twiddling with the chalk in his hand, doing it just like this. Finally, he placed the chalk back on the chalkboard, and he said to my friend, this study is now over. My friend said, he said, wait a minute, will you please explain this passage to me? Explain the differences here. And the scholar just simply said, no, this study is over, and I can no longer talk to you. I don't want you to come back. Folks, there's something radically wrong here in the heart and in the mind of that scholar. Brilliant man, but who had never legitimately studied eschatology. Now, ladies and gentlemen, those parallels are absolute perfect. They're precise. Matthew chapter 24, the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds, in power and great glory, with the angels. Sound of a trumpet, great shout, to gather the elect. And verily I say unto you, Jesus said, this generation will by no means pass until all of these things have been fulfilled. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, the coming of the Lord, coming of the Son of Man, with the angels, with the trumpet, with the shout, on the clouds, to gather the elect. And Paul says twice, those of us who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul is not alive today. And that means, unless you can come up with absolutely definitive proof that Paul's talking about something totally radically different from what Jesus was talking about in Matthew chapter 24, that means that 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 would be fulfilled at the same time of Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, 29 to 34 was fulfilled in the first century. That means the Olivet Discourse is not divided. That means that Matthew 25, 31 and following was fulfilled in AD 70. And I'm out of time. Tomorrow we're going to discuss the argument that is given that says, well, I agree that AD 70 was the coming of the Lord in judgment with the angels, etc., but it was a type and a shadow of the real coming of the Lord. As one individual who's rather caustic and ugly and arrogant and what have you, but nonetheless, he says it was a historical type of the ultimate, of the real end of the age. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. You don't want to miss it. You can get my book, AD 70, A Shadow of the, quote, real, unquote, end, question mark, on my website, donkpreston.com. We'll have more to say about that tomorrow. So I'll see you on the flip side.